Toxic masculinity.
I'm toxic, she's masculine. Together we are toxic masculinity. And today is April 20th, the day
Of
justice.
Dogecoin.
The what?
Joking.
The day of Dogecoin, yeah. The day of Dogecoin and the day justice died in America.
I did not have a doubt that it was going to happen, but I thought they would have some mercy on him. But they, he had like 3 murder degrees, and they all been
Yeah, 3
guilty.
counts.
3.
Well, so let's talk about the Chauvin thing a little bit. This is story number 1. I don't have an article to read. I just want to present to you my reaction on this. Now, this is something that I had a live stream on Mr. Reagan. Probably many of you saw that. But I want to reiterate what I said on that show, which was that there's a couple things. One, this was very obviously a miscarriage of justice. I'm not sure exactly how this happened. To me, it was very obvious that the man was... he was trained to use this particular restraint on difficult suspects, people that were being arrested, resisting arrest. So Derek Chauvin restrained George Floyd in a manner that he was trained to restrain people. I don't know how you could possibly claim that restraining somebody in that way, as you were trained, could be considered murder, especially when the man very clearly and obviously overdosed on a variety of drugs, including, I think it was 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. He had like 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, or something like that. It might have been more than 3 times. But, yeah, the guy obviously overdosed on drugs. There was a cop that was restraining him. The other cops were not telling this cop, oh, you're killing him, get off him. Mm-hmm. You know, they were casually walking around, observing what was going on. They didn't seem to think there was any kind of a problem. They seemed to think this guy was following protocol. How this ever got to court is beyond my comprehension. I mean, other than the fact that they were essentially strong-armed into it by the woke mob. And the only explanation that I have as to the guilty verdict is the pressure from the woke mob. Now, what was extra disappointing to me was that I was watching this on Fox News, and Fox News lost a lot of credibility after the election because they just accepted the results, as bizarre as they were. They accepted those results as valid, sort of unquestioningly, which annoyed the hell out of me. Seems to me that Fox does seem to have some kind of an interest in trying to subvert the rage of conservatives. There is this perception about conservatives that we're all a bunch of racist barbarians, and at the slightest hint of injustice, we're all going to go out murdering everybody, right? And so they want to sort of tamp down on any kind of sense of injustice or anything that might outrage conservatives. They'll try to suppress that, right? Organic Robot said, "Did I miss the intro?" All right, we'll go ahead and throw in the intro. All right, here you go.
Toxic masculinity.
All right, yes, this is Toxic Masculinity, and I am talking about the Chauvin trial. And look, again today, the Fox News folks, the 5 was on when the verdict was read, and every member of the 5 said that this was the justice system in America working. No, this was a miscarriage of justice. This was the justice system not working, and I would particularly like to focus on Greg Gutfeld's reaction to the trial, which I think was horrific. Greg Gutfeld said the following, and I'm paraphrasing. He said that he believes that Chauvin was guilty, which I think is ridiculous. But he said that even if he didn't believe Chauvin was guilty, he would have liked to see a guilty verdict. And the reason he said that was because he doesn't want to see any more rioting. this is infuriating to me. Greg Gutfeld has been manipulated by domestic terrorists into doing what the terrorist mob wants. You do not give in to terrorists. You know why you don't give in to terrorists? Because terrorists then learn a lesson. The lesson they learn is that terrorism works. If I go ahead and terrorize the American people, they'll do what I want. And they'll continue to terrorize the nation. And more terrorists will come along, and they'll terrorize the nation. It's just like the immigration policy. You open up the borders, you invite illegal aliens to come across without consequence. And what do you get? More illegal aliens coming across. You say, oh, we're humanitarian. We're letting them in because we're nice people. That's not the limit of illegal aliens who will come over if you invite them. If you tell them it's okay what you've done breaking our laws, you can come right on in. It doesn't stop with those ones. You've just invited 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more to come in. You have to understand incentives to be a politician or to even think about politics in any sensible way. Yankee the Rebel says, I don't know if the left is trying to subvert rage from the right. Everything the left does just causes rage on the right. Yeah, I'm not talking about leftists. I'm talking about like Fox News. I don't think leftists care about right-wing rage. Well, they do to some degree, and I'll tell you why. Leftist media organizations never show black men assaulting white people, right? Or murdering white people. They will always show every instance of a white person killing a black person. Every time that happens, that's on the news 24/7 for like a week. But anytime a black person murders a white person, it's covered up. It's not shown. I have a video that's popular right now about a black woman that murdered a 3-year-old white girl. It's a big black woman. She was actually kind of famous. She had won a cooking show called like Worst Cooks in America or something like that. And so she was somewhat famous. So this should have been a story across the news, around the world, actually, to some degree. Should have been everywhere. A somewhat famous black woman so she adopted these little white kids, right? A sister and 2 brothers. And the little girl was 3 years old, adorable little girl. And she beat her to death. An unbelievably horrific story. Should have been front page news. Should have been on every single. But the thing is, these news agencies, they think that white people are racist and there's going to be some kind of like murder in the streets. We're going to start lynching black people, right? And so they don't cover it. And Fox News is the same. Oh, the Chauvin trial showed that Chauvin was guilty. Justice was done today. No, it effing was not. Justice was not served. Justice was not done. There was no justice here. Okay, this is an injustice. This is a miscarriage of justice. It's despicable. It's awful, and it's terrible. If you guys want to comment on that, feel free to. But I think we're gonna move on to the next story. I think I said, I spent over an hour live streaming about that. So if you want to see everything I have to say about that, you can go over to my live stream on Mr. Reagan and watch that video. But let's move on maybe to the next story. What do we think, Valeria? It'll be story number 2. Don't read story number 1, because I think story number 1 is about the Chauvin thing.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to story number 2. And I'm going to switch over to Valeria so that you can see my beautiful wife while she reads the headline. Darling?
Study. White liberals more likely to have mental health problems. Surprising.
Yeah, so we often say that leftists are crazy. Now we have scientific proof that that's true.
If you wouldn't have a mental health problems, you would be Republican.
Well, that's right. That's right. I think that's true. Well, I guess it's sort of like a chicken and the egg type thing. Does leftist policies attract crazy people, or do crazy people?
Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.